If you've struggled with performance anxiety, especially in sports, here's 3 things that I found to be transformational. And these are gonna cover things that I've learned in the last 10 years of working on my mental performance and working on my mental health that ultimately was in such a bad spot that after my 2nd year at Washington State playing D1 baseball, I quit because I just couldn't handle the stress anymore. I remember having coaches that would just scare the shit out of me. I remember throwing the ball around the diamond in infield, outfield, and having to put 2 balls in my pocket because I had the yips so bad. No joke, sophomore year, I would throw the ball either right into the ground or I would launch it into left field. So I had a ball in my back pocket because I knew that would inevitably happen. And it was incredibly stressful. I would sit in the bullpen or I would sit in the dugout knowing that there was an opportunity that I might be going in and playing. And in my mind, I would be wishing, oh, I hope we hit into a double play and it doesn't make sense for me to go out there. Or I hope we lose so I don't have to go in the bottom of the 9th. And I was so nervous about having to go out there and perform that I was hoping for poor performances for my teammates, for the team. I was hoping that we didn't win games because it would require me to then put myself in that situation to perform. I remember being so nervous going into practices and looking at the practice plan and seeing 1 to 2 drills that I just knew I was not proficient at. And so then as that moment would come in practice, I would get so nervous and that moment would just scare the living shit out of me. And in a game situation, I could totally do that task. I could totally do that drill. I could field that bunt. I could lay down the bunt. I could hit behind the runner. But it's something about that practice situation where you have more time to think about it, where it just becomes so much harder. And so like I said, I ultimately ended up quitting. And I ran away from those high pressure situations so that I didn't have to experience them. But what I ultimately found out was that there's more high pressure situations in life that you can't just run away from, whether that's in the boardroom and you're presenting at work, or whether that's in the bedroom or going on dates. That performance anxiety followed me around, and I eventually got to a point to where I needed to do something about the root cause so that this wouldn't show up to the degree it was showing up in the rest of my life. And this is a conversation that I've had so many times with clients and athletes that are commenting on posts that I'm making and saying, hey, this is something that I deal with too. And so I wanted to film this video and walk through the 3 things that have been most transformational for me to help me manage my performance anxiety. And I would say even get to a point to where I'm so much more confident and don't really experience it to the degree that it was crippling before. So as I was researching this, I found this really interesting study from 2019 in the Frontiers of Psychology. It looked at the common ground between anxiety and performance in sex, sport, and on stage. And so in number 2 and 3, the things that I have learned over the last 10 years, we'll look at the 7 characteristics and influences of anxiety surrounding sports performance. But this first one I want to dive into has been crazy in its ability to get me focused and confident in a matter of seconds. And that has been the practice of resource anchoring, which is something that I learned from NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming. This book specifically gave me a number of tools to be able to use language and thoughts to shift my mind in and out of different states that I wanted to have. And how this works is by basically transferring emotions from different memories that you've had in times when you've experienced the emotions, the feelings, and ultimately the confidence that you want to the current situation that you're in. And maybe you don't have a lot of experience exuding an emotion like confidence. And that's where you can imagine a fictitious character. And this is actually something that is covered in Todd Herman's book, The Alter Ego Effect, which is another really good book for being able to use alter egos to essentially transfer those emotions that those characters, those fictional characters, those celebrities that they have into yourself. So here's how you use resource anchoring. You can either do a kinesthetic anchor, you can do an auditory anchor, or you can do a visual anchor. A visual anchor is going to be something that you look at, like a picture. It could be a foul pole. I remember working with Brian Kane at Washington State, and at the time I didn't buy into this, but we would look at the foul pole or a different spot on our bat anytime we swung at a pitch in the dirt or got beat badly, and that would allow us to go right back into a zone of being focused, controlled, and poised. But this visual anchor could be a picture that you look at. It could be a memory that you have that is attached to a certain object. And by looking at that picture, or by looking at that specific object, or by looking at the foul pole, it brings your mind back into a state where you were confident. The memory and the emotional parts of the brain are very tightly linked. And so if I can look at a picture of maybe like, let's say my family, and that brings joy, happiness in a period when I'm not experiencing that, I can transfer that emotion. The other one is going to be auditory. So this is where I will listen to music, or I will have a mantra, something that I repeat to myself. And when I repeat that mantra, or when I listen to that song, that elicits a specific emotion and experience that I've tied to that song. So maybe you went to a concert and you have this amazing experience back in your memory of that music. And as soon as you hear that song, boom, you start to feel that feeling. So by using that auditory example, you're able to elicit that emotion into that present moment that you want to experience it. The last one's gonna be kinesthetic. So that could be something related to touch. And it's gonna need to be something that is really unique, because you don't wanna mix kinesthetic things that aren't necessarily associated as positive. So for example, I'll do this, and this is the kinesthetic anchor that I've created to where when I do this, I've anchored it in my mind to be confident, 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 poised, 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 whatever that is. And then I will actually utilize all three at the same time, where I go like this. I picture Greyhound by Swedish House Mafia, and I have a memory where I'm throwing a runner out in high school, which is when I was the most confident that I've ever been. So that's a visual, that's an auditory, and that's a kinesthetic. And so now if I'm gonna go and present, or if I'm gonna go and do a sales situation, or if I'm gonna go and be on stage, or if I'm getting ready for a YouTube video and I'm nervous for whatever reason, I can go into that state at will. And that's something that is incredibly powerful, and something that I wish I would have had going into different at-bats where I'm pinch hitting, or going into the bottom of the ninth and catching in this one-run game where I was just so nervous. One thing I'll say that is really critical in doing this is as you start to make that kinesthetic change, and as you start to visualize what it is that you want to visualize, and as you start to listen to that song or repeat that mantra, make sure you move your body as you go into that state, so that there is an association with you moving into that state, and that is where you want to be. You don't want to stay stagnant in the same energy that you're in currently. Number 2 is going to be facing the dragon. This is going to you becoming buddy-buddy with the thing that you fear most, failing. And one of the coolest examples I've heard of facing the dragon is from Colin Henderson, the CEO and founder of Fix Your Mindset. He actually played baseball and football at Washington State, and when he came on the podcast, one of the things we talked about was performance anxiety. And he spoke about this team that he worked with in the minor leagues, where this center fielder just could not complete a throw. He was airmailing everything, and he basically had the yips. And so what the coach did and what the team did was they created an environment and a container for him to fail. So what that allowed for the player to do is work through the judgment and the shame and the fear. Because here's the thing, the players and the coaches knew that he was struggling. But as soon as you call a spade and shine a light in the darkness and say like, hey, you're going through this. We know you're going through this. Here's the support that you need. Go airmail a couple balls and get this out of your system and face that dragon. That's when he was able to get to a point to where the thing that was creating so much power over him ultimately lost that power. And now you might not have that same kind of container, a teammate, a coach, or even a manager that you can go and say, hey, I'm struggling. I need to just get this out of my system, and have them be totally patient. And now that's where I would say, working with a therapist, working with a sports psychologist, and creating a self-container for yourself to work through and process that is going to be really beneficial. And there's 2 characteristics that they found inside of this study from 2019 that address these topics specifically. And one of the characteristics that this study identified for people with performance anxiety was evaluation, where you are recognizing in your mind that you are experiencing symptoms of performance anxiety, and then that gives you more anxiety. You notice that you're nervous, or you notice that your palms are sweating, and then you attach more meaning to that, and that spirals the anxiety out. And so what I found to be really helpful is just simply relabeling or renaming that anxiety. If I'm gonna go and perform, or if I'm gonna go and do a sales presentation, and I recognize that I'm anxious or that I'm nervous, I would just go and say, cool, I'm excited, or I'm focused, or this actually means something to me. If it didn't mean anything to me, I wouldn't be caring. And I found that to be incredibly helpful. The second trait and characteristic is perfectionism, where essentially the people experiencing performance anxiety were so nervous about things not being perfect, or about not doing and executing things perfectly. The study said, in one retrospective analysis, those who choked were self-critical when their perfectionist goals were not achieved. And so just like that center fielder, you gotta become best friends with failing. And you gotta create a container for you to go and fail, and recognize that that big thing that you resisted for so long isn't actually as bad, because what you resist persists. And so if you can just allow yourself to go and fail in the manner in which you are so nervous about failing, you're gonna realize that it doesn't have the power that you give it. 2 things that I've done to help me get over this in other areas is, if I'm nervous about presenting, I went and did Toastmasters when I was working at Amazon. And yeah, it made me nervous. No, I didn't want to public speak on the spot in front of random people that I worked with at Amazon, but it helped me get over that fear. Another example where I've gone and done this is going on dates without the expectation that it needed to be the perfect date and just being able to go back and laugh about it, as opposed to being, oh my gosh, what if I say something dumb? Or what if she rejects me? Or what if she doesn't text me back? Go experience that. And you're gonna recognize it's not as bad as you make it out to be in your head. And number three, the thing that I found to be the most helpful with performance anxiety is to simply do the work. And this might sound obvious, this might sound simple, but hear me out. When I look back to when I was playing college baseball, I can now say that I was not putting in the work needed to feel confident and competent in situations where I was nervous. And that anxiety that I was feeling a lot of times was simply me not being ready and me not being prepared. Imagine going into a presentation in high school or in college and not preparing for that presentation. Yeah, you would get some anxiety. And when I think of different ways where anxiety shows up, one of those is not being able to know what's coming, or not being able to predict your proficiency or your competency in a number of situations that might arise. And if you don't know what's coming and you don't know if you're gonna be able to handle what's coming, that's going to lead to a lot of anxiety. So that means doing the hard physical work and putting in the reps and making sure that you can do what you need to do at a high level consistently, so that you don't have that doubt and that anxiety of, oh, what if I can't do it? The other part of this is doing the hard work mentally and being able to create new mental models and new perspectives and do the things that are hard around creating perspectives that serve you, as opposed to holding on to self-limiting beliefs and, again, mental models that do not work for you propelling yourself forward. So there were 4 characteristics and traits in that 2019 study that addressed this topic of doing the work. The first one is expectations. And it's the personal meaning and the self-identity and self-image that is carrying a significant amount of weight for the athlete. And it's the attachment to the expectations and what is actually happening that creates that anxiety. There's a saying that the root of all suffering comes from the attachment to expectations. And so if you put all of your self-worth and your ability to perform at a high level or do something with a lot of proficiency, and that's not happening, that's gonna create a lot of anxiety. That delta between where you are and where you wanna be is gonna create a lot of that stress. The thing that I found to be most helpful is to make this mental model shift to being able to focus on the effort, the process, and the work, and letting the results take care of themselves, which is cliche and every single coach will say, but when you can place your identity in doing the work and loving the process, the results will take care of themselves. If you do the things that you need to do, if you do the work, the results will take care of themselves. Second characteristic was vulnerable personalities. And it said, performers in high self-consciousness are more aware of and concerned with others' impressions of them. So the fix that I found is that creating more self-awareness is going to create more self-confidence. Knowing yourself at a very deep level, your core values, what you stand for, the high standards that you know you will hold yourself to is going to lead to more self-confidence. Another way to think about this is your say to do ratio. If you say you're gonna do something, how often do you follow through with it? If you say you're gonna get up at 6 a.m., do you get up at 6 a.m.? If you say you're gonna go and do some drills, do you go and do some drills? If you say you're gonna go and work out, do you go and work out? The closer you can get that to one-to-one, the closer you are going to be with trusting yourself, having confidence in yourself, that you are going to be competent and that you are going to follow through with anything that you say you're gonna do. And that is going to breed confidence. When that happens, you care less about the opinions of others and more about the opinions of yourself, because you know yourself and you trust yourself to be able to do and get through anything that you say you can. It's the people that don't know themselves and don't trust themselves and don't have self-confidence that ultimately get uprooted by the opinions of other people, because your roots don't go deep in knowing who you are and what you stand for. The third characteristic was competency. Low self-confidence, often related to self-efficacy, are more likely to experience anxiety. In contrast, high self-confidence may contribute to superb performance. Simply put, competency is going to lead to confidence. If you are not confident at your ability to put down a bunt, or make free throws, or present, or be in a sales situation, or talk to a girl, or talk to a boy, whatever, go practice that. Go put in so many reps that it would be unreasonable for you to not feel confident in your ability to do that. All the things that I just mentioned are skills, and we can tell ourselves these lies and have these mental models that, oh, I don't have this skill. I wasn't born with it. and that is playing the victim, and you have 100% control over your ability to get better in any arena. Are there some people that have a natural proficiency for it? Yes, but you can 100% outwork them and catch up to that, and that's where you're gonna get your confidence, because you've done the work to be competent. The fourth characteristic, and unsurprisingly, is a lack of practice. Lack of practice and preparation, including poor physical care, has been cited as reasons for choking. And what did I say at the beginning of this video? If you don't know what to expect, and you don't know that you are capable of handling the unknown, that is going to lead to a ton of anxiety. So the fix here is simple if you haven't caught the drift of doing the work. Be prepared. Cross your T's, dot your I's, make sure that you have planned for every possible scenario and that everything that is within your control, you have controlled. The seventh characteristic was differentiating. And this is different than the other three, and I put this in its own separate section because this is essentially someone who is by trait or by state anxious. By trait means that they are an anxious person in just about any situation. By state means that certain situations makes them anxious. And so in this situation, I would 100% recommend that you go and do the work with a therapist and with a psychologist to work through anything that might be state versus trait. So it is my belief that therapy works, and if you need to go to a therapist, you 100% should. I've worked with a therapist, I've worked with sports psychologists, mental performance coaches, life coaches, business coaches, you name it. These people have all helped me work through things so that I can navigate struggles that I'm going through and then press on forward and grow. I also think that it can be more harmful than good to identify with anxiety, with performance anxiety, and just go to a therapist as a form of mental masturbation to where you think you're doing the work, but you're just identifying with something and becoming a victim. You might say to yourself, I would do that, but I have anxiety, or I can't do that, it gives me anxiety. That is playing the victim. And if you identify with the anxiety that you have and you identify with being the victim, you give away all of your power rather than taking ownership over everything that you can control. And there might be situations where you have anxiety because it is a trait that you have. That's okay. As long as you're doing the work necessary to manage it and still improve and get better, that's what we're going for here. But don't give away all your power and say that I can't because of X, Y, and Z, because that makes you a victim and that makes you powerless. And I choose to believe that I have the power to change my situation for the better. That's all for now. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, got value out of this video, please hit the like, subscribe, and ding the bell for notifications to be notified the next time I drop a video. If you know a friend or someone that is experiencing performance anxiety, share this with them. And then if you want to learn more around different tactics to create different mental models to navigate this, check out my story breaker video right here. It's going to give you a way to get around the different thoughts and stories that you're telling yourself so that you can have more empowering perspectives. Other than that, I'll catch you on the next Return of the Athlete video. My name is Paul Klingen. See you later.